Okay, today's lesson is going to be on modeling with quadratics and factoring. It's going to be 4 questions. There is no backside to these notes. And as mentioned above, happy Pi Day, everyone. Today is 3.14, which is pi, right? Today's March 14th. And yeah, so hopefully you're enjoying a nice slice of pie or a pizza pie, because that counts too. Um, let's go ahead and jump into these problems. And if you notice, these problems are going to be a very nice mix of the stuff that we've been doing the past week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, along with some of the stuff that we did last semester. So the stuff doesn't go away; it just continues to build on itself. So let's look about the first. Let's talk about the first problem. It says the length of a rectangular hallway is 3 feet more than twice the width. If the area of the hallway is 44 feet squared, what is the length? So there's a couple of things that I want to point out here. The first thing is that they tell me that the length of a rectangular hallway, so the length is 3 feet more than twice the width. I'm going to go ahead and write down that sentence exactly using a mathematical equation. The length is 3 feet more than twice the width. So I'm going to write twice the width first and then 3 feet more than that. So there's the first thing I want to point out. The other thing that I want to point out is that they tell you that the area of the hallway is 40 feet squared. And they tell you it's a rectangular hallway. So they're saying that the area of the rectangle is 44 feet squared. I'm going to go ahead and write that the area of a rectangle equals. Now, instead of actually writing that it's 44, I'm going to write the formula for the area of a rectangle, which is length times width. Okay. And the next thing I want you to notice is that this is area of a rectangle. Well, let me go ahead and start replacing stuff. So I know that the area of the rectangle is 44 feet squared. So I'm going to go ahead and write the 44 here. But you see where it has that L? I know that that L is the exact same thing as this L, which means I can replace that letter L with the 2W plus 3. I'm going to write 2W plus 3 times W. Now, this part is super duper important. When you have this, we're going to go ahead and distribute that W. So I'm going to write these little arrows in here. I'm going to multiply the W times the 2W, which gives me 2W squared. And I'm going to multiply the W times the 3, and that gives me a 3W. And I'm going to go ahead and bring down the 44. Now, this looks like the stuff that we've been doing the past week, right? So far, it's the stuff that we did last semester is what we just did. But now, I'm like, oh, maybe I should set that equal to 0 and hopefully factor. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to set this thing equal to 0. So that means 0 is equal to 2W squared plus 3W minus 44. And at this point, we try to factor it. So that way I can try to find my zeros. So I'm going to write, if I look for a GCF and it looks like there is not a GCF, so I'm going to write 0 equals 2W with a W. I'm trying to multiply to the number 44 and add up to 3. So let's see, this is going to be 1 and 44, 2 and 22. There is no 3. There is a 4. It's going to be 4 and 11. There is no 5. There is no 6. There is no 7. There is no 8. There is no 9. There is no 10. There is an 11, though. That's 11 and 44. 11 and 4, but who cares? That's not going to work. All right, and you're going to try all these different combinations, and just because I've done this a few times, you're going to realize that this is the combination that works. And again, this is just trial and error, guys. It's a guess and check. You're going to try 4 and 11. So, for example, if I try 4 here and 11 here, this is going to be 22, and this is going to give me 4, and 22 and 4 does not give me the 3 that I'm looking for here. So it's not 4 and 11, but if I try 11 and 4, then this gives me 8, and this gives me 11, and this can give me the 3 that I'm looking for. It's a positive 3, so that means this would be a plus, and this would be a minus. So that is the combination. Obviously, I didn't go through all of them with you, just in the interest of time and making this video a little bit shorter. So I need a positive 11 and a negative 4. Now that I have it factored out correctly, I'm going to go ahead and find those zeros. That means either 2W plus 11 is equal to 0, or that W minus 4 is equal to 0. This is going to be 2W equals negative 11, which means W is equal to negative 11 over 2, which is like negative 5.5. Or the simpler case is W equals 4. Okay? But let's think about that. That means either the width of the rectangle is negative 11 over 2 is the same thing as negative 5.5. So either the width is negative 5.5 feet, or the width is 4 feet. And it doesn't make sense for a width to be negative feet. So it's not going to be this one. This is actually going to give me a false answer. It's got to be this one, right? The width must be 4. going to go back and read the question. It says, what is the length? I found the width. I haven't found the length yet, but I can go back and use my original equation that is right here. I know that the length is 2 times the width plus 3, and I already know the width, so I'm going to plug it in right here. I'm going to go ahead and write L equals 2W. My width is 4. I just did all that wonderful math to find that out. Plus 3. That means my length is equal to 2 times 4 is 8, and then plus 3 is going to give me 11 feet total. So that takes care of the first problem. Moving on to the second. It says that the height of a triangle is 5 inches smaller than the base. If the area of the triangle is 42 inches squared, find the height. This is going to be very similar to the last one we did. It says that the height is 5 inches smaller than the base. So if I want to do that, I'm going to go ahead and write that the height is 5 inches smaller than the base. To make it 5 inches smaller than the base, I need to take my base and subtract 5. You need to write it this way, b minus 5. If you write it as 5 minus b, it's going to be incorrect, okay? So if I were to have a picture to kind of draw this out, the situation I'm working with is I have this base of the triangle. I'm going to call it b, and I have this height. But that height, instead of calling it h, I'm just going to say, no, that height is the same thing as b minus 5, right? Okay, now that I have that, I use that first sentence. Let's look at the next sentence. If the area of the triangle is 42 inches squared. So I'm going to go ahead and write the area of a triangle. The formula for the area of a triangle is base times height divided by 2. And now I'm going to go ahead and start substituting my values. I know that the area of the triangle is 42, so I'm going to go ahead and replace that here. I don't know anything about the base, so I'm just going to write b. I do know that the height is this h that we just figured out. This h is the same thing as this h. So instead of writing the letter h, I get to replace it with b minus 5 divided by 2. Now, what makes this problem so difficult is that divided by 2, and I'm just going to get rid of it by getting rid of a divide by 2 by multiplying by 2 on both sides. These are going to cancel, and you're going to be left with 84 is equal to, and just like last time, I'm going to go ahead and distribute that b. We're going to put those arrows on it. B times b is b squared, and then b times negative 5 is negative 5b. That statement now looks very, very similar to the stuff that we've been doing last week. So I'm going to go ahead and set it equal to 0. So let's go ahead and just continue the math over here. I'm going to get it to equal 0 by subtracting 84 on each side. So I get 0 is equal to b squared minus 5b minus 84. I look for a GCF, and unfortunately there is none, so I'm going to have to factor this. But thankfully, there's a 1 in front of this b squared, so it's going to be much, much easier to factor. 0 is equal to parentheses b and parentheses b. And I'm trying to get numbers that multiply to 84. So that's 1 and 84, 2 and 42, 3 and there is a number 28. Is it 28? Is it 28? It is 28. 4 and 21. There is no 5. There is a 6. That's going to be 6 and 18. Let me just make sure that's right. That doesn't sound right. Let me check that again. No, it's not 18. What is it? 64, 14. 6 and 14. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Sorry. 6 and 14. 7 and 12. There is no 8. There is no 9. There is no 10. There is no 11. There is a 12. 12 and 7. But that repeats my list. All right, so it's got to be one of these. And remember, this is the easier one because this number is the 1 in the front. And so I just got to figure out which one of these combinations gives me the negative 5. Looks like it's going to be that one. The way I get a negative 5, though, is the 7 needs to be positive and the 12 needs to be negative. So it's going to be a plus 7 and a minus 12. That means in order for me to get my zeros, either b needs to be negative 7 or b needs to be 12. And hopefully you're able to follow that, right? Like you set up your equations. But I think a lot of you guys can go ahead and do this already, all right? If you don't know what I'm talking about, do the step we did before. Set each one equal to 0 and solve, okay? All right, so b equals negative 7 doesn't make sense because I'm not going to have a negative base in a real world problem. So I know that my base needs to be 12. Let me just go ahead and read the question again. It said, find the height. I found the base. I need to find the height. Remember that the first thing we found was that the height is the base minus 5. So I'm going to go ahead and use that. the height is equal to my base, which is 12 minus 5, which means my height must be 7, and this would be the answer for this question. All right, we got 2 more questions, and then that'll finish up these notes. I'm not sure if I said it, but there is no backside to these notes, so you can go ahead and plan for that. All right, find the missing side of the triangle below. I see x minus 3, x and 15. In class today, a lot of students were, because I'm finding the missing side, I don't want to hear area of a triangle, okay? They didn't say anything about the area, so don't use the area. They are telling you about the sides. And so I have a right triangle and I have sides. A lot of students were trying to go 30, 40, 60, 90. I'm sorry, 30, 60, 90, or 45, 45, 90. That is a good guess, but I know I have a 90, but I don't have a 30 and I don't have a 60. So I can't use 30, 60, 90. That's the same reason I can't do a 45, 45, 90. But what I can do is if I have 3 sides of a triangle, heck, if I have 2 sides of a right triangle, I can always use Pythagorean theorem, okay? Which is exactly what we're going to use. We're going to go a squared plus b squared equals c squared. The only thing with Pythagorean theorem is you got to make sure that you use the hypotenuse correctly. So here's my 90 degrees. The side that's not touching the 90 degrees is your hypotenuse. So that means the 15 needs to be c. And if the 15 is c, then I'm going to go ahead and label the other ones. Then this is going to be my a, and this one's going to be my b. Probably should have used a different color because man, oh man, you cannot see that at all. So let's try that again. This one's definitely my C, and I'm going to use this one as my A, and I'll use this one as my B. The A and the B can be switched. The C definitely needs to be the 15. So let's see. So when I say a squared, what I really mean is x squared plus, when I say b squared, what I really mean is x minus 3 squared. And when I say c squared, that's going to be a 15 squared. All right, on this type of problem, we're going to go ahead and expand that x minus 3 squared. So I'm going to rewrite it. This is going to be x squared plus x minus 3 times x minus 3. And 15 squared, that's 225. I'm going to go ahead and expand this x minus 3 times x minus 3, and some nice things happen. So I got x times x, that's x. Actually, let me bring down the x squared. X times x is going to be another x squared. X times negative 3 is going to give me a negative 3x. Negative 3 times x is going to give me another negative 3x. And negative 3 times negative 3 is going to give me a positive 9, is equal to 224. Why did I do that? Well, now I'm able to combine like terms. So I can combine these two. X squared plus x squared, that's going to give me a 2x squared. I can combine these two, negative 3x and negative 3x, that's going to give me a negative 6x. And because I want this to equal 0, I'm going to subtract 224 from both sides, which means I can subtract it from the 9. And when I do that, I get minus, and what number is that going to give me? That is going to give me a 215. Whoa, 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 whoa. Just realized what I did, guys. Sorry about that. I might have confused you a little bit earlier. This is 225. I'm sorry. So we're going to subtract 225 from both sides. And what that gives me is 216. And that's equal to 0. Okay, sorry about that confusion. All right, so all I have to do is factor this. First step in factoring is try to find a GCF, and there is a GCF. It is so important we use that GCF because it makes our problem so much easier. That doesn't mean the problem is going to be easy. It's just going to be easier than if I didn't use the GCF. So let me factor out that 2. So what I really need to do is focus on the x squared minus the 3x minus the 108. So instead of finding numbers that multiply to 216, I really only need to find numbers that multiply to 108, which is a lot smaller, right? It's half the size. All right, so let's go ahead and try to factor this out. Actually, let me go ahead and do that on the other side. I'm going to continue the work over here. So I know I have a 2, and because it has the x squared, so there's going to be parentheses x and parentheses x equal to 0. All right. At this point, we are trying to find numbers that multiply to 108. So that's 1 and 108. That is 2 and 54. That is 3 and 36. That is 4 and 27. There is no 5. There is a 6. 6 and I believe that's 18. There is no 7. There is an 8. No, there is no 8. Um, there is a 9. 9 and 12. There is no 10. There is no 11. There is a 12 and 9. And that completes my list. And again, we're trying to get this middle number. So again, numbers are multiplied to 108, but they need to add up to -3. And it looks like I'm going to be using this combination right here. If I want a -3, I need the negative to be on the 12. So this is going to be a +9. This is going to be a -12, which means my answers, x equals -9 or x equals +12. But again, the -9 doesn't make sense because I'm not going to have a negative side, which means the missing side here must be a 12. Incidentally, if I want to find this side, I know my x is 12, so then 12 minus 3, that means this side must be 9. So my sides are 9, 12, and 15. Okay, last problem, and then we should call it a day. So a man at the edge of a 240-foot cliff throws a rock upward. The path of the rock can be modeled using the formula h equals -16t squared plus 32t plus 240. How long does it take for the rock to hit the water below? Okay, so if you want to picture what's going on, there's this man standing by the edge of a cliff, and he takes a rock, and he kind of chucks it up in the air over and down the cliff, and he's trying to figure out how long is it going to take for this rock that he threw, we'll draw the rock right here, to hit the water. Okay. Now, if you want the rock to hit the water, and remember this thing right now he's about 240 feet above the water. If you want the rock to hit the water, what kind of height would that be? Well, that means that the rock is right here, which means it's splashing on the water. So we're going to say that the rock has a height of 0 feet. That's important because now I know what h is, right? I want the height of the rock to be 0. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and substitute my equation. Instead of h equals -16t squared, I'm going to write 0 is equal to -16t squared plus 32t plus 240 because I want the height of the rock to be 0. Okay. Well, that made it easy because not only is it only using one formula, but also like it's already written in the correct form. I already have a 0 equals, right? So I need to factor it. I'm going to go ahead and factor it, find the GCF. 2 goes into it, 4 goes into all those numbers. So does 8. But more importantly, so does 16. So 16 goes into all of those numbers. That means I get 0 equals, and because I have a leading term of a negative, I want to factor out a -16. So this is going to be -16 parentheses. And how do I get this back? Well, that's going to be a t squared minus a 2t, and this one becomes a -15. So instead of factoring something that had a 240, really we're factoring something that has a 15. So I'm going to make my list. That's either going to be 1 and 15, or it's going to be, there is no 2, there is a 3, 3 and 5, there is no 4, there is a 5, 5 and 3, but, oh, I made that super easy. So 0 equals -16, parentheses, t and t. There's my 15s, and I'm trying to get a -2. That's going to happen if this is negative right here with the 3 and the -5. So this is going to be a +3 and a -5. Now that I have that, I can find my zeros. That means either t equals -3 or t equals 5. And since I'm not going to have a negative time on throwing a rock, that means it must take 5 seconds for this rock to hit the bottom of that water right there, or to hit the water, I should say. All right, guys, that's all the notes I have for today. As always, if you ever have any questions, please feel free to ask.